Okay, now all of the sudden it feels weird to speak English with you because I've been talking to my camera in French. But yeah, so Ola Volo, bienvenue, welcome.
Merci beaucoup. Bonjour.
So Ola has been a friend, and she was recently posting a lot about all our engagement in social causes, and it got
Mhm.
me thinking that we never really talked about it. And I was like, oh, we need to have this discussion, and I want to know more about your art, where it comes from,
Mhm.
because it's really deeply rooted in your culture and your traditions. And I also wanted to know more about your next projects and
Mhm.
who you're collaborating with in terms of like social causes and everything. So
I would love
tell
to.
us a little bit about it.
Well, it's always good to catch up with you, and I'm like, gosh, it feels like we're in two different parts of the world, but it feels like the
We
right.
are actually in two different parts of the world, so
It's clearly evening time over there, and is it?
yeah, the sun is going down slowly, so that's why I wanted to catch you up during the daytime for you. So it's a
That's
bit
awesome.
nicer.
Well, yeah, it's nice and stormy out in Montreal. So it's one of those days where I'm at the studio and I'm just about to finish a project for another like cause. Well, it was for Laval, like for the city of Laval. I'm doing a mural there next week, as of Monday. But it's an interesting project. Like maybe we can start off with this because as I started working with different causes and different reasons to produce my work, I sort of like started to link the concept of storytelling, not just my work, but the story of communities.
Yeah.
And so when Laval came by to the city of Laval to collaborate on this mural, it's a mural that's in like a very fairly poor neighborhood in Laval, and it just not poor, but it just like it has it's mixed up. It's just like I feel like it's a park that hasn't been taken care of since like the 80s. So it's a park that's used by a lot of kids and by a lot of families, but I don't think the city has funded to make sure that this park is up to date. And it's a beautiful space, but at the same time needed love. And so this neighborhood has gone through so much change, and there's a lot of immigrant families coming from Haiti and Morocco. And so what we did is we included all the kids, like not all the kids, but kids in the neighborhood who are like in the after school programs. And I researched all kinds of birds that represent that are that like official birds of that country. So like whether
Wow.
it's Morocco or it's Haiti, and then included them into this mural as a way of because birds migrate and they're the concept for me. That's why I
Oh,
add
it's
a lot of these in
beautiful.
artwork is because I'm an immigrant myself, and for me, immigration and migration is a big part of like finding home in a new place.
Yeah.
And so next week we're doing this thing where it has not only I know I've researched and found out so much more information about what's the official bird of Morocco or whatever, but
Who's
also
the official bird of Morocco?
oh my God, it's so beautiful. I forget the name of it, but it's like there's one where it's like super black and white and it's got pattern on the actual tail of the bird has like these specific patterns that look like
Yeah,
my
you're describing it. I totally see the correlation with your work. That's amazing.
so when I kind of like when I started to research it, I was like, this isn't it's not that I'm making it's not a cause, but it is a representation of the people, and we get to work on it together, and we get to redo the park, and it's like this big dome that holds like
Wow.
change rooms, washrooms, whatever supplies, right in the middle of the park. I think it's been there since like the 60s, and we get to make it like a thing that people get to discover as a piece of art together, and it's like a representation of the neighborhood and the people who live it. So I
Oh,
was
wow.
like,
Are you gonna work with the kids on the mural
yeah,
itself?
they're coming
Oh,
after school. So after 3 o'clock, they come and we work together until one until they go or like sunset,
wow.
I guess.
Oh, I
So,
love
but I get
that.
to work with it myself, but with them. So it's one of those things where I used to think like, well, my mural's not going to be efficient and it's not going to be fast enough. I'm just going to do it by myself. But after realizing how it shifts people when they start to create and they start to touch paint and think
Yeah.
about what does art mean to them, why does it hang out there, what is it like, what's the longevity and the fact that there's people behind it. I was like, man, that's why we
That
do
makes
it.
sense, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, this is like
Yeah.
project coming up.
Yeah, it's
Right.
so beautiful. Like, if I do workshops or stuff, and then the moment I see like the person kind of like tilting into letting it go,
Yeah.
it's such a beautiful moment. And then you see the pride they take into the creation. So it's even
Exactly.
more amazing that these kids, they'll like take their families and they'll be like, look, I did it. And it's going to be there for
Forever.
years.
Mm-hmm.
So they'll grow up and their work is going to be there. So it's like printing a moment in their life. It's pretty cool.
And maybe somebody is gonna be like, well, like I just painted on the wall and we made it beautiful together. Like maybe it will inspire somebody, maybe not to paint a wall, but to like make it a little bit part of their life where they're like, oh well, I should do this at home sometimes, or I should just like do it with my friends. Like when I see that it has this sort of like echoing effect on
Yeah.
other people. They're like, well, I'm going to talk about it and I'm going to show you that it's not so elite. Like the concept of
Yeah.
art being so precious and uninviting and elite and whatever. I disagree with this so much because
Yeah.
it's the magic out of art for me. Like when I see this, like you're not invited to this
Yeah.
class or
Yeah. I
whatever.
feel art should be playful and you should enjoy it, even though when you're creating, sometimes it's like it's painful because it's hard and you're
Yeah.
putting your energy and your emotions in it. But I've talked to so many people who told me like, oh, I can't draw, I can't paint, I can only do like,
Mhm.
like those like stick men.
Yeah.
I'm like, no,
Yeah.
you can. Like everyone can. So it's like breaking that kind of like barrier with a
Mhm.
kid.
Yeah.
It's just gonna echo, as you say. It's yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's gonna be big. And I I wanna, take you because you've done something in Montreal that I love, and it's the big mural, but
Uh-huh.
it's not only for, like, the aesthetic of it, it's for the meaning because I think, if I'm right, you were, like, the first Canadian woman to realize such a big mural, right?
Right. Yes. The
How
biggest.
was it? I remember seeing you right after and, like, you you told me how hard it was.
Oh my god. It's interesting. I've done murals now close to that size, and it was a different experience after. But I think the mural in Montreal was so emotional for me because of, well, of course the size was insane, it was huge, and the
Totally
technique
insane.
I approached it with, like we rolled with a roller this whole thing. I'm like, today's mind I would have sprayed with these huge guns and like had my own techniques, but I really took my time to create it in a way that I knew best at the time. But also the way the placement of the wall is so exposed to the people.
Yeah.
So your whole process, your day to day, your sketch, your first layers are such a vulnerable part of the process that usually you're like, oh, I'm like, wait till the good part.
Yeah, you're in between 2 buildings, kind of hiding.
Here it's just like there's nothing in front of it, and this path is used by so many people that I remember feeling so nervous about, like, I hope the people will respond well to this piece of art because I just realized how much space it takes visually.
Yeah.
And I was like a bit thrown off by how almost like I didn't understand the significance of this wall until I got there and I understood the history and the energy that this wall carries. And I was like, oh my God, like this
It
is,
was such an anonymous wall before, because
yeah.
we all been there, like the village éphémère. We
Mhm.
have so many activities, and it's so iconic, this building,
Yeah.
but I don't think anyone ever, like, thought about the wall, and now I feel like every photos I see is the focus, and it tells a story, and I'm like, "Wow, that's such a landmark for now." Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah,
Yeah.
that really changed my I guess my direction in my murals because it opened up a lot of doors to create large works because you like you okay, that person has the skills to pull some a big wall like that off, but also it kind of made me understand how impactful large art is, and the fact that it's a female character that's taking up all that space in a comfortable way where
Owning it.
she's
Yeah,
owning that space. She's like, I'm comfortable. Are you? Because
yeah,
and that's kind of how I see artists in Montreal. They're just like, no, this is my space. Like, you're welcome to. So there's
yeah,
this energy that she carries, and I kind of now that I finished it and I look back, I was like, oh, she really. I feel she represents what I wanted it to represent, like this
yeah.
badass, like
It's
powerful
true.
thing.
I never even thought about it, but it brings comfort because she's like very like
Yeah,
she's there and she's
mhm.
just doing her thing.
Yeah,
I'll
exactly.
see it differently now. Uh,
Yeah.
and it was it like the biggest wall ever made by a female Canadian artist?
Yeah, I think it still is. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a pretty large one. So, but I mean, I just it kind of made me realize that there's so many large murals in Canada, but very few of them are made by women, are completed by women. So I just think it's not that there's not women who can't. It's not that at all. It's just that we need more opportunities. We need
Yeah.
to trust other female artists to take on such big walls and big projects. So it raised a lot of conversations around that subject. I'm like, but why? Why not? Why isn't it more common? Or why is this not? Why this even exists? This
Yeah.
concept, but yeah, I think all it is just there's not as many opportunities to do large murals in general. And then it also gets even more harder to get those opportunities when you don't have a portfolio full of large murals. So it's like it has a lot. There's a lot of things that's connected to why.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, we just need the opportunities to
You
try.
just need yeah, you just need one. Yeah, yeah. Yeah. It's like looking for a job. You have experience, but like it's the first job. Like you need to start somewhere. You need someone to trust you. But I'm
Yeah.
guessing in like the mural world, there's less women, or they used to be like traditionally, right?
Hmm. They used
So
to. Yeah.
somehow it still maybe carries that
Yeah. Yeah, and
into
I think it's
today's world.
changing. I see it changing like every year. I'm looking at more
Yeah.
the more I travel, the more it's like a decade ago we were such a it was a tough squeeze, you know, you're like showing up to a festival, you're like, where are the old chicks at? But now it's a bit more it's very I
Yeah.
don't know, I feel like it's equaling out. Like but you know, it's common in different industries. Like I'm watching the digital art industry, like a not industry, but a genre of NFTs and digital work. And everyone's like, oh, 95% of the artists are male artists in the digital space. And I was like, oh yeah, that's true. But it will change. But it's just like we're kind of repeating similar patterns. So I hope that with new spaces opening up and new genres of creating art, that we
Yeah.
change it faster, that we don't wait another 10 years and we're like, oh, we're late to the game. Like, no, like if you're
Now
interested, right,
now
this
is
is
a good time. Yeah, I didn't know that.
yeah, yeah.
But you're
So
doing NFTs as well, right? I just saw some
I
NFTs dropping.
yeah, actually I've been creating NFTs for since last January. So it's been a year and 3 months or something. So or whatever, how I'm a year and a half around. And but I only recently got onto like a platform that's like that I've always wanted to be part of. It's like kind of a big deal for me. And
Where?
yeah, they've been awesome. And I've also like was able to bridge an interesting way where I create work. I create a lot of female characters in my work, and I started to work for different causes with mural work and with whether we're doing like Lambert. I don't know if you know this bag company Lambert.
Oh
Lambert,
yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and like we
My bag,
recently,
the
yeah,
bags. Yeah,
Lambert.
you did. scarf,
We did a
right?
scarf that like the donations go to a shelter for women who are like from 18 to 25 in Quebec. So different ways, but it's a scarf. And then it's a mural in Vancouver that we did a big like
Yeah.
stunt where the donations go from the mural through this QR code. We could talk about it a little bit later. But I was able to sort of like find these causes. Well, I guess these people found me, but then participating, but then include that into NFTs. And then recently, I
Wow.
collaborated with this organization called Seneca Woman. And they're very closely associated with the UN, with the World Bank. They like host their events at the Met at the in New York. So they're very like a very prolific, very interesting group of women who support other female organizations and fund especially women who are getting into the web 3.0 and stuff like that. And so we did this project together where we six female artists, six different countries. We did like one collection about equality, and then we dropped the artwork on this
Wow.
place on the NFTs. And I really wanted the artwork to be donated, the funds from the like 100% of the funds to be donated to a Ukrainian organization because that's exactly the time when
Yeah.
they need it the most. Right now, I'm like, yes, women in the web world need it, but women and children in Ukraine need it so much right now. And so
Yeah.
and kind of float this idea by the organization. They got super into it, and we had the drop, and we raised tons of money for like from
Nice.
and all these other female artists and this organization, and we
That's
had like
beautiful.
and we had the Ukrainian organization that is on foot in Ukraine at the time come to talk to us, and also like the president of Times Magazine talked to us about this project, and we just had like key people who were like,
Yeah.
"What you're doing is interesting." So
That is great.
I'm like, art.
But that's it, like, art is just it's so much more than, like, something you put in your house and,
Yeah.
it is such a way to communicate and to do good and to share. It's like from doing it in a park to raising so much money. It's amazing, and then seeing different organization and women and artists mixing business and fundraising, I love to
It's
see that. That's the
uh,
ultimate goal of art for me. It's just like,
right.
yeah, that's it.
And I think as I'm getting older, it's just like I'm trying to find it like not trying to find, but it's like art is giving me a different perspective and different reasons for doing it. Before I was like, I just want to get ahead. I just want to go and I'm gonna get a bigger wall, get it, kind of like this rush. And as like the pandemic kind of got me to think about, but why? Like what does that piece mean to you? And like I had a lot of reflecting over the pandemic
Yeah,
and I don't know, kind of like I have this craving to collaborate with people or bring them into my world a little bit more. And we have this meeting in this week with this immigrant this like this housing space for who houses immigrants who just arrived to Canada, and I think they give them a space for like a month or a month and a half to stay there, or like something longer, maybe like 2 months. But it's a space that's like only run by donations, so it's right on the plateau, and it's in our neighborhood, and so they accept whoever, however you can contribute, and they have this huge backyard with like all these beautiful walls, but everything's gray and everything. And there's so many kids there, and I'm like, absolutely, let's do something. Like I'd love to donate something where, well, I
yeah,
hope a piece of art would be. So that's where I'm kind of heading this summer, and more guiding towards projects that sometimes people reach out, but more like, oh, I think this is really needed. This is what I
yeah,
can do, and I'm here in Montreal or in Canada, so might as well
yeah.
give back to our neighborhood that could need it. Need
Projects
it.
that make more sense,
Yeah,
that are
for us.
linked to a cause, yeah.
Yeah,
That's beautiful.
we'll
And
see.
it takes guts because in the art world you never know when's your next thing.
Yeah,
So I feel it's always like kind of this chase of like, oh, I have to say yes to everything because I don't know about tomorrow. So
exactly.
actually like picking and choosing and everything aligned with what you want, it
Mhm.
takes a lot of courage because you're gonna say no to things
Yeah.
eventually. But then you just
I'm not sure if it's the right way of doing it, and I know you nailed it on the head when you're like, it takes courage because you don't know what's next. I'm like,
yeah.
I said no to projects that were outside the country just so I could stay here. But it's like still nerve wracking. I was like, what if I did something wrong? Should I not like cancel that? Just go for it and then whatever. And I'm still in that nervous energy. I'm like, just like chill, go with the
Yeah.
flow. Everything, the
Yeah.
universe has a plan.
I'm always counting on the universe. I'm like, give me something here. No, but like, okay, I say words of wisdom that I don't even listen for myself, but they're not words of wisdom. Like, who do you think I am? But like, it's like when you have space for things to happen,
Yeah.
they can happen. Like, I have like this tendency of like doing so many things that I'm not even sure why I'm doing it, and I don't even
Mhm.
take the time to actually do it well.
Yeah.
Not that I don't do the work well, but I don't have the time to enjoy it. It's like next,
Mhm.
next, next.
Mhm. Mhm.
But nothing can happen because there's so many opportunities that I don't even see because I'm like this
Right.
running. Like when
Exactly.
you stop, and I think not just because I'm here, but being here, I
Mhm.
have so much freaking time. I think I wake up in
Wow.
the morning like, okay, today I'll work on this, but it's like I work on things slowly, and I like enjoy the process. And as
Mhm.
much as I loved being in the studio before, I never felt like it was enough, and I never felt I had enough time to create. And I've seen it like in a small scale. I've seen how my work changed and evolved, and it's more sensitive. So I feel like it's almost the same in life. You just and I'm
Mhm.
talking to you, but I'm like really honestly talking to myself, being like, take a chill pill, MC.
No, you're
You know
totally
the
right. No, and I feel that from you. Like I feel that sort of appreciation of the pace is different, but somehow I don't know if it's true or not, but like when things are you feel like the world is slower or you feel like you have a lot of time for yourself, the days stretch longer. I said like enjoy that process so much better because in the studio I'm like, "Oh, it's lunchtime. Well, it's time. It's like sync a set or whatever." It's always this. By the time you get in the flow, which is like a real thing, a
yeah,
flow, three
yeah,
hour, it's a magical place to be. Like we can,
it is so good.
it's even rare to get into it on the daily. Where if you can
Oh,
get into it on the daily, you are already winning. Like,
yeah. Honestly, like it's been this flow, like not every day, obviously, but I feel you because like if I now I've learned that like because I don't have like 6 days a week in the studio fully, I have other things and stuff. When I have these days in the studio, I don't even say yes to go for coffee or meet or have this phone call because I realize that even saying yes to dinner, I'll probably be out of the studio at 6, to be honest. But the idea that I have to be out at 6, the whole day is kind of ruined. And it's
yeah,
so stupid and it's so not rational, but like the whole day I'll be like dabbling into stuff, not really getting into any flow, any like
yeah,
pace of creating just because I have this in my mind. But maybe I'll
exactly.
just have a flow for 2 hours. I would have had time, but I don't do it. It's such a bizarre thing, this creating flow.
We can't put a finger on it. Like I'm reading a book about it right now called Stealing Fire. And it's exactly about that flow, about how, the people, the guy who created Google, the guy or Steve Jobs, there's this concept of the flow and how it's like this magical state of mind where you have like you're sort of interconnected with the universe. And I'm not going to get into like the because I can't speak about it because I'm not as
Yeah,
like in tune with all the I don't
same.
know connection with the universe convert like a lingo, I guess. But
Yeah, no,
I,
but it's something like when you really let go.
yeah, when you really let go and you
Yeah,
let and you create, and then somehow I'm sketching and the sketch works. Like, oh
yeah,
man, that works, and this sketch works, and this idea is great. This is not a
yeah.
good idea, and I throw it out instead of trying to make it work. I'm like, that's
Or I
not a good.
put it, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I step back and I'm like, oh, and I'm like, I don't even know who did that. Like I
yeah,
feel like it's not
exactly.
me. And I'm not very spiritual, like
Mhm.
a,
Yeah,
normal, you know,
yeah, yeah.
this because I don't understand it, and it's great because I'm like, oh, okay. Sometimes I'll like step back and I'll be like, ooh, I need to get back into
This-
that flow, girl.
You're
That was
like,
me. I was
is this
not a good.
possible? You're like,
Am I making a living doing art? You know.
I know, I feel the same way.
My brother's an engineer, and he's a very engineer,
Mhm.
and but he creates stuff, and he has the same thing. And I talked with a lot of different engineers like that are very creative, and they are
Mhm.
the same. Like if you put a meeting at 2 p.m., they'll be like, "Oh, the day is ruined. There's still
Yeah,
many hours." It's just this creative, and it's across all field. I feel.
yeah, and I talked to my partner, with Patrice.
Yeah,
He writes a lot, and he talks about that flow. He's like, man, it's such a magical place. He's like, I used to be able to get there faster, and now it's like it's so much harder. And so we're trying to figure out like what is it? What's the ingredients? What? And truthfully, I think when it comes down to it, the common denominator between what we just talk about and when we discussed is exactly what those things, those blocks. If you pre-plan, you're like, well, send me a Zoom meeting, da da da, and then all of a sudden your whole day is with Zoom meetings. You're like, oh, it's okay. After 2 o'clock, I'm good until 5. That's gonna be my flow. Like, hell
no,
no. You're
no.
gonna be wired about that idea that you just spoke about. So that's gone anyway. So I think
No.
it's just giving yourself
I
space.
really believe in the power of like working and getting into work. Even like the flow is not like this magical like woo, but
No.
if you don't create the context for it. And when I got my studio a couple of years ago, it was way bigger than my previous studio, and I was freaking out. And I was like, "Oh my god, this is too big for me," you know? And
Mhm.
I was not even allowing myself to get there
Yeah.
and chill. I felt like, "Oh my god, I can't chill in my studio because I should be, like, productive because I have to pay all this footage."
Right.
And it was such a stupid idea. Now I realize, like, some days I'll just sit for a couple of hours and read and look at different books and maybe do nothing at all, and
Mhm.
that's part of the creating. And as I'm super alone here, when I'm, like, doing nothing, it's like it emerges. It's not
Oh,
always good, but it's like it's flowing.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I find that lately I've been doing a lot of digital work, like a lot. Like I'm talking like 12 hours a day for like 3 weeks in a row, nonstop. And I'm still doing it right now because I'm prepping for that mural. So I'm creating it digitally. But I kind of I really hit a wall last week where I was like so fed up with not having anything tangible.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm in my studio, all my freaking canvases are blank. What the fuck? I have this beautiful space. Everything is set. All my paints, my brushes, everything is good. And I'm creating all this ideas that are in my head, but they're all in this digital form, which
Yeah.
is cool. But on the other hand, I think everything needs to come in doses. Like you need to have, as you said, like I sometimes need to just freaking chill and like watch my work from a distance. And I'm like, sometimes I like to mess around with colors and stuff before I get to my creative process on canvas work or on paper. But when I overdid it, I'm not producing anything tangible, but things that live in this other space, which is digital. I got, I no joke, but I got like super depressed. I don't get depressed for long periods, but like for like a good couple of weeks or like a day or two where I'm like in
Yeah.
a low place where I was like, oh my God, like I need to hold something. I need to feel like I'm mixing color. I'm like
Yeah,
choosing, I'm pointing a finger at this, and I'm saying like this
yeah.
green, this yellow, and then I'm making myself.
You're touching things. I know. If I go away and I'm not creating, and it's so stupid because I've carried my sketchbook and my pencil cases like everywhere I go.
Uh-huh.
I barely use it, honestly, like, but I
Uh-huh.
need to have it just in case. If I don't have it, like, I'm like, oh. And if I go with for like a couple of days or like a week not creating it, I feel weird.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
know.
it's like, yeah,
But
I guess
you're
for the
lucky
artist,
that you are mixing mediums and using on paper and canvas, and I think all those directions, whether it's a sketchbook, whether it's paper, it's an emotional, like, it's an emotional experience where you like there's a lot of chance and a lot of um you know how the paint spills, how the brush goes. There's a lot out of control, where I think
yeah.
about digital work is a lot about control. It's a
Oh,
lot
yeah.
about make sure that we all use the same tools technically. How do you stand out with my pencil, like with my like pencil and my thing, like how do I stand out with the fact that we're all using the same Adobe program or whatever. But when it comes to like brushwork, watercolor, acrylic, oil, whatever it is, there's so much about this chance of how it mixes, how you
Yeah,
do that brush.
and
There's
it's literally like a continuity of your arm. It's like it's your body, like, and you
mhm,
do like even in your canvases, they're not small, so
yeah,
it's like your whole body is kind of engaged, and it's kind of a dance, and
yeah,
you're physically
exactly,
there. So
exactly.
yeah,
So I'm proud of
gosh,
you.
imagine
Keep
talking to you,
doing.
I'm like, should we go painting?
Oh no, listen, all my canvases are blank. Like I haven't painted in, I don't know, like 6 months. Like I'm,
Wow.
yeah, I'm just either I go to a wall and I'm painting in, like I just painted a big wall in San Francisco for a commercial, painted did a big print releases, we silk screen a bunch of stuff. But I just create digital work lately and it's been cool because I've been seeing it like all over the world. People are, whatever, buying the artwork and it's cool. But for me, in my heart, I'm like, fuck, like I need to get back into painting and like mixing and just getting messy.
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
deprived of like I need this so
Yeah.
bad. Yeah. So,
Honestly, like, I there's no better feeling than this, like, I don't know, like, the sound of the brush on the canvas and the paint.
mhm.
Fucking love it.
You're like, if I could pre-record that thing.
Yeah, sometimes, like, I'll, like, do, like, a video when I'm painting, and I hear that after, and I'm like, "Meh, it's so good," because like, it didn't exist before, like, and now there's something, you know?
Exactly. How that's so much pride. You're like, I created something that didn't exist before, and all of a sudden it's like it also has a chain reaction because somebody could respond to it or somebody could it's spring up an idea or whatever it is. So anyway,
Yeah,
I
and
think
the way people read the pieces, I'm sure it's the same for you and any artist. It's so connected to their past, their current experience, and it's always so interesting for me to see how people not react, but how they interpret the work,
mhm, mhm,
because
mhm.
they see stuff that I never intended to put in, and I'm
Yeah.
happy. And I your
Mhm.
work is quite intricate. It has a lot of details.
Yeah.
So it must be very cool to see people reactions to it too.
Yeah. Well, I think I intend for that too because I think with my background being, I'm from Kazakhstan and of course being here, the artwork feels like it's a combination of a lot of cultures and it's very multicultural. There's a lot of little surprises that I put in so I can have those like moments of surprise. And sometimes like I'll hide a snail or sometimes I'll hide like a building that's actually local and whatever it is, or maybe something, a surprise in the crown that you don't,
Yeah,
or the mural you like, the one that is in Montreal. If you keep
yeah,
looking at it and you look at the sun, there's like a big sun. You look deeper into it, into the sun. It says "My Land," and then if you start to see that there's like typography in there, but just it's something that you only like. You might see it and you might not see it until later, but
I love that. So it's very playful.
playful, yeah, and I think it kind of like shakes people up to not take art seriously, where they're like, oh, it's it it's in a public space, so it's intended for adults or for the public, but art should always be playful, whoever it's intended
Oh yeah.
for, kids or adults or whatever. And so I think adding those elements of surprise and seeing those reactions is the thing that gets me going back to the drawing board.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I want more of those reactions.
I know, like, the last time when I was in Finland doing the residency, I remember, like, I was, like, drawing my hand.
Uh
I was
huh.
like, "Shit, man." I remember being a kid and being so amazed by the fact that I could draw the shape of my hand,
Yeah,
and it
yeah,
would be on the paper after, and I'm like, "This is my hand." And this, like, kind of, like, naivety and, like, playfulness
yeah,
that I feel like it's so essential to art, but
mhm,
it's so easy to lose as well, or
yeah,
lose touch for a little while at least. That
yeah,
yeah, and I like that in your work. There's a lot of colors. There's a lot of like it has a lot of depth, but it's
mhm,
not approached in a violent way or a dark way. It's just so nice to be like there. Like it's a nice thing to have in your life, you know. So
Oh, and I love your work too. I always feel so liberated when I see your work. It feels like it flows out of you. No, it truly it has this idea of like that's what I was saying. Like what's beautiful about how, and that's what I'm not like I'm not, I just crave it so much of this like freedom of
yeah,
flow, and you have it, and I feel like you're always tapping back into that. Where you
yeah,
guide, where does your head goes, where does your body go, and like you feel that
yeah,
in your work constantly. So I'm like,
yeah. It's
yeah.
funny because sometimes I wish I could like think through what I'm gonna do and like do something so specific, but when
Mhm.
I start creating, I'm so bad at following, like, the rules. I'm just like, "Fuck it." Like, I had, like they gave me this big, massive piece of canvas. It's, like, 160 inches by 30 inches, and I
Damn.
unrolled it, and I felt the pressure of, like, "Oh, I gotta do something meaningful because I don't have a lot of materials here, so I
Mhm.
need to use it well." And then I could paint this olive trees. I started, like, being like, "Oh, it has to be good."
Yeah.
Did the background, I was like, "Fuck it," and I played. I was like it was a full on a dance. I was just having so much fun, and
That's nice. Did you finish it?
yeah, yeah.
Okay,
And
okay.
it's really long, it's hanging, it's been ma like, I didn't really touch it, like, it was, like, water and blacks, and I used a lot of the rocks, and, like, I was, like,
Oh my god.
rolling the rocks over it and the branches, so it was just, like, very freeing, and I'm really happy with the piece, but I remember clearly being like, "Oh, I need to, like, do
Mhm. Yeah, yeah.
but yeah, that's
But
how
sometimes
I
just trust.
paint, so I guess I have to go
That's how
against it.
you. No, but that your work, it holds that energy forever. Like I there's something crazy where whenever I feel tense and I feel or sad, like say if I'm creating a mural and I'm not in a good mood, every time I come back to that piece, a mural or a piece of art, I feel that energy. I mean, I know it's memory, but I also
Yeah,
see how people react to it. And it's a similar, they have a similar, it's never like, oh my God, I'm feeling so inspired. Or like, I don't feel
yeah,
that way. But when I feel exactly how you were describing, like, oh, I was playing on it, I was dancing half the time I was on that lift, half the time I was painting, interacting with people, it like holds that
it's
energy.
yeah, I
Yeah.
think so too, and again, I'm not super spiritual, but I do believe that, like, that's, like, because you put your heart and soul into a piece, so
Mhm.
somehow it reflects, and it
Yeah.
reflects probably in the smallest, choices you make that day. But like
Yeah.
it's interesting because you work with people, like you work with walls, so there's a lot of things involved. It's not only like, oh, today I'm feeling like I want to work, I'm gonna
Mm-mm.
work. You
Mm-mm.
have to like
Schedules and weather
there's
and
people,
money
there's
and how
people,
much.
there's deadlines.
Yeah.
So you have to like kind of like get over that, like, oh, I'm not feeling well, and still create, which is a very strange
I know.
approach sometimes.
And sometimes you would go like out to a different country or a different city where, let's say I'm like in LA or whatever, and then their client is like, has very high expectations, and like there's like a construction that had to stop their construction so I can paint for 5 days, but all the
The
constructions are
pressure.
waiting for me to chop chop girl, and I'm like up there having a panic attack because I'm too high up in the air. I was like, no, you got to be in a good space. This is fun. You do this for a good time.
Yeah.
And I gotta say, like, it hasn't proven me wrong once. Every time I'm in a good place and I'm creating the artwork, it vibrates like that for a really long time. But if I'm scared or if I'm nervous or whatever it is, it also has that vibe. So I'm on the same page with you, babe. Like every time you're like, I'm flowing, and now this piece, I'm in love with it. I'm like, I'm sure every single person who is going to see it will feel exactly that energy. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, I people told me, oh, it's like a dance. I'm like, they don't even know how I did that, you know? But I was
right.
literally dancing over the piece. So I guess
Wow.
your theory has been proven right.
I'm glad. I'm glad. Oh, this is so nice
Well,
chatting.
it was so nice chatting, and like thanks. And we will definitely plan a flow of park,
I would love that. I would love that.
chilling in the park this summer.
Well, enjoy the last 2 weeks of your vacation. I mean, not vacation, but I was just like
Yeah,
having the
please.
old back. I'm like, it's a vacation now. Enjoy the
I mean,
food.
I feel my life is like endless work and endless vacation, so whatever.
Well, enjoy the last 2 weeks there, and then
Yeah,
bring all that energy back here. And can't wait to reunite. But
I'll
thank you
see
so
you
much for the
soon.
chat. I feel so
Yeah,
motivated today. I needed a little bit of pick me up, and I think this conversation was exactly what I needed. So
even though we had a Zoom in the middle of the flow.
that's perfect.
Hopefully it was a good motivation. All right,
All
take
right.
care, and I'll see you soon.
You
Bye.
too.